It's the craze that's taken over the lives of so many. With 2.34 billion active users worldwide, everyone is on social media. Platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat have totally changed the way we view and receive news. In sport, it's been revolutionary. It gives the public the chance to have their own say. On TV...
What do you think? Use the hashtag PL tonight.
If you would like to get involved tonight, you can do it. Use Twitter.
On radio...
Contact us on Twitter at TalkSportDrive. Ronald Koeman has just tweeted a very fiery response to Martin O'Neill's latest accusations.
And much more. But just how big has social media become in sports? Access to sporting events and news has increased massively in recent years, as a result of the rising influence of social media and developments on numerous other digital platforms. What I want to find out is whether all this is actually having a positive effect on sport and sports news. Is print journalism a dying industry? And are more traditional journalists that have written for newspapers throughout their careers now willing to accept this? And could all of these social media platforms actually be on the brink of expanding? To get the view of a hugely respected sports journalist that's been working in the industry for many years, I went to speak to The Guardian's Dominic Fifield, who's been in the very thick of the evolution of social media in journalism in the last few years. Okay, so first of all, Dom, I mean, you've been in the job for a long time now. How much would you say the introduction of social media and online journalism has changed your job role?
I think it's changed the environment around sports journalism. I'm not quite sure how much it's changed my role as such. I suppose you have to be more aware of what people can write on social media. There are stories generated from social media, from Twitter in particular, and Instagram, you know, people, players, say, posting their thoughts or their opinions. And I suppose you can track what they're up to as well to a certain extent on that, which gives you a bit more insight into their world. But as far as my role is concerned, I think that's just something you have to be aware of. The Guardian encouraged us to set up our own Twitter accounts quite early on. I think it was ahead of the 2010 World Cup, so we all had to be Twitter active in South Africa.
How much of The Guardian themselves then try to maximise their social media presence?
We have definitely been at the forefront in terms of online. I remember when I started off at the paper back, it was 18 years ago now almost. And I started off doing the occasional shift on our online desk, Guardian Unlimited, and it was just 6 men and a dog in the building next door to the main office. And now up at King's Place, where it's digital first. It's get your stuff out there online first. It doesn't matter if it's duplicated in the newspaper the next day. We're all about generating the readership online with a view to attracting advertising, with a view to increasing revenue on that front. And it's a massive change over 18 years, but something you have to embrace because it is the future.
Would you say then that it's very important, if you're going into the industry now, to have a more digital background?
That's where the industry's going. It's going digital. It's going, online first. That is clearly where it's going. Newspaper actually purchasing, people purchasing a newspaper. That's a dying industry. That's only going one way as a trend. So you need to have that. I mean, that's the bare minimum. And I'd be amazed if there's a journalist out there who's starting out now who doesn't have those skills, because not having them is shooting yourself in the foot.
The GOAT agency is a company that have taken advantage of the marketing opportunities that have emerged from social media. Harry Hugo is the company's co-owner, and with his success coming as a result of developments online, does he believe that newspapers will soon be a thing of the past?
I've never really been a newspaper buyer. And obviously with what I've tried to do on the digital side of it all, I've been pretty against it. But that does still hold a place for it. I think journalism isn't dead. I think journalism is in the greatest position it's ever been in. I think print publications are dying. I think that's very, very clear to see. I think that you couldn't find a stat to knock that up. You've only got to go and see what The Independent did with cutting the newspaper in, totally, and then moving on to online only. I mean, that says a lot. It's a big national newspaper. I'm sure a few more will follow in the next few years. I would have thought things like Daily Mail, who are one of the biggest websites in the world, are going to start looking at that. They're not the biggest in the UK in terms of circulation, but they're the biggest in the world at providing news. So they spend so much money and overheads on distributing their newspaper, printing it, having all the journalists. They just put it online. Their margins will go through the roof. So, and they can do it. They're so good at it. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next 10 years we see that shift go massively. The only one that I know will stay for probably the longest, if it can continue to get advertising, is the Metro, because it is so indigenous to the fact that it has to be a handheld copy, unless the tubes and things like that in London buses actually put iPads into your seat. That's the only way that would die.
So are the days of strolling into your local newsagents and buying your daily read of choice slowly dying? Nowadays, news is so much more accessible, and in sports, news stories spread online as soon as they break. If you're online, you'll often see articles the day before you'd see the exact same ones in a newspaper. So this is the back page of today's Daily Mirror, a story about Chelsea striker Diego Costa lashing out on an opponent in a game last night. So obviously you could have bought this paper today and accessed the story then, but actually if you were online or on social media last night, you'd have seen the exact same story go online around 10 minutes after full time. And that's the case with most of the stories in here. A lot of these were published online no later than 10:30 last night. In 3 newspapers between Monday 20th and Wednesday 22nd of March, 76% of the sports stories were available online the previous day. You can access these stories totally free of charge, along with other features such as videos and plenty more articles that aren't in the paper. Social media gives people a platform to share and discuss these articles as soon as they're published. All match reports that were in these papers were online just minutes after the full-time whistle, and the majority of sports stories and newspapers are put up online after a 10:30 PM embargo the night before. So what does all this mean for the way we find out about news?
It's definitely made it quicker. I think that's the fundamental change that's happened in the last sort of, especially 5 years. People are reliant on that digital media in comparison to what they were reliant on the morning after. Now they're worried about the night before. So news is much more almost subjective in the way that people know news before other people know news, just depending on what sources they're getting that information from. If they get it from Twitter, then they probably know it as soon as it breaks. If they get it from a website, they might know an hour later. If they get it from the newspaper, they know 12 hours later. So news has become a very interesting word because it's different people can access that news in different ways at different times, and therefore, is news even a thing anymore?
James McManus is Social Media Director for Squawka, a web app that allows you to access real-time data online whilst you're watching a football match on TV. The company has a huge social media presence, and James also believes that newspapers and the typical articles that come with them are becoming outdated.
Things like match reports, which a lot of traditional newspapers make their bread and butter. You don't need, what's the point of a match report? Like, you're either at the match or you've caught it on social or you know the score from the radio. You literally don't need to read about whether Kevin De Bruyne set up a goal literally 16 hours after he did it. It's just completely pointless. So it's trying to spin off different ways which make that more accessible. Can you offer some analysis on the match? What does the fact that Kevin De Bruyne got an assist mean for his context of assists in the Premier League this season, or for his current form, or for Man City's current form? There has to be an and why now, whereas before it just used to be the point.
The unique stats that Squawka provide have proved to be the company's biggest asset, and the main reason the company has continued to grow.
In terms of what Squawka do, I think the fact that Squawka have information which you can't really get many other places is going to be the way forwards. Companies and news sites in particular are going to have to find a niche, something they're recognised for and a USP. Being a news aggregator is the past.
The way that big clubs like Arsenal use social media is vital. Nowadays, a lot of fans use online announcements and tweets as their main source of news. The increase in people following and participating in these tweets over the last few years has been groundbreaking. Arsenal's Twitter following has increased from 7.6 million to 9.6 million since June 2016. Whilst their Instagram account has increased from 775,000 in July 2014 to just over 9.2 million today. But could sports teams actually use social media to their advantage even more?
100%. Audiences require so much information now because of how everything's changed across Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. The behind the scenes lust for this information, or different footage that they can get hold of that they never really cared about before. Now people care about when a player leaves the bus to when they get into the stadium. Like, that wasn't even a thing 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, probably not even 2 years ago.
I think a lot of football clubs and players treat it, they're almost scared to do it right, whereas I think there's a huge opportunity for football clubs in particular to have just loads more fun with it. Like, they don't like it at the moment because they can't really control players and what they say on it, but that's why fans and players have never felt so far apart, I don't think. The lack of accessibility, you couldn't imagine having a pint with any Premier League footballer really. It's just they're inaccessible. But I think the way it should turn eventually, because a lot of clubs are hiring a lot of digital people in senior roles now, like Man City, Tottenham, Arsenal, that these sort of big clubs have sort of realised we need to connect with our fan bases because you're in danger of losing them with the amount of money in the game.
For a journalist, one of the most convenient features that comes with social media is for sharing news articles and stories. The followers that news agencies and journalists generate online means that nowadays their work can reach out to so many more people than it did in the past. How useful would you say social media is in terms of sharing your articles?
We're actually looking as an organisation, we sort of set a minimum target of 5,000 page views for any article that we publish. And if that target isn't reached, then the company is starting to rethink about whether it's worth even pursuing those subjects again in the future, which is going to have implications, I think, for our news service. You know, is the Chesterfield manager losing his job going to generate enough hits to justify writing anything in future? Probably not. And I think if we're just purely tweeting stories to get that engagement, I don't think that'll be enough. I think it's going to need further. It's going to need other factors. It's going to need video content. It's going to need Facebooking, definitely. It's going to need trying to get that up the Google list to make sure we're right at the top of that, just to justify publishing stories a lot of the time.
We have two accounts on Twitter, one on Facebook. I'd say 30% is us sharing articles that we do. The other 40-50% will be sharing stats, which has no link back to the website. So that's just to grow our account, people get sharing our information that we have proprietary information on. And also yesterday we did, it's like a question and answer thing called Ask Squawka. It's like a session for an hour where all of our Twitter followers can literally ask us any stat question over an hour. And that is purely just for our followers. We don't get anything out of that basically. But 6 guys working intensely for an hour trying to answer as many stat queries as possible. But that's the kind of point of social. It's not just link farming. It's how a lot of sort of traditional media outlets and newspapers still treat social media. They treat it as a one-way street, like here's a link, you should read it and then you should go back and maybe have a look at another one of our links. But it has to be sort of a give and a take, and that's kind of what Squawka does.
The speed at which you can find out about breaking news stories on social media has also become an important factor for journalists. Websites like Twitter and Facebook are the first places people go to as news breaks for more details and for updates on stories as soon as they come in. And I suppose the other side, how useful is it for gathering news stories?
Partly. I still think the traditional sources for journalism and for journalists should be the priority. I'm not going to lie, it's a bit like Twitter in particular, it's a bit like a news wire. We've always used the wires over the years where you get stories filed from the Press Association, from Reuters, from around the world basically. And you'd be able to monitor subjects through that, and they drop into the queue over the course of the day. And Twitter's effectively that, but it's punters, it's protagonists sometimes alerting the world to what they're up to and what's going on.
Social media accounts have also become an important platform for significant announcements. Both Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, who both scored plenty of important goals here at Wembley, both announced their retirement from professional football on Instagram. And websites like Twitter and Facebook give fans a chance to react to these statements the very second they're released. Gone are the days of releasing statements and announcements to the press. These days, most sportsmen choose to use social media to release any important information regarding their careers. One individual whose social media presence has gone through the roof recently is Manchester United star Paul Pogba. After weeks of speculation circling online in the summer of 2016, it was announced that Pogba would be returning to United from Italian club Juventus for a world record fee of £89 million. A colourful character, The Frenchman sent Instagram into overdrive when he announced that he was leaving Juventus, and the adrenaline-busting post that followed when his transfer to Manchester was confirmed was everything that the fans expected. True to his character, he collaborated with grime music superstar and huge Manchester United fan Stormzy for Adidas, and the video they released online went viral straight away. And it hasn't stopped there. In January this year, Pogba became the first ever Premier League footballer to have his own emoji, and his online and digital presence is stronger than ever. Manchester United's poor form this season has seen him come in for criticism for his performances, and some actually believe that his social media activity is more a hindrance than a help. The increased opportunity for fans to have their say online has also played a big part in the development of sports television. Channels such as beIN Sport and BT Sport now have their own designated fan interaction programmes, where pundits react to and discuss supporters' social media posts. In the last few months, we've also started to see live sport appear on social media. So how should sports broadcasting giants such as the BBC and Sky be reacting to all this?
I think they should be very, very scared. I think the most scary thing for the Skies, the BTs, BBCs, Channel 4s, ITVs of this world is going to be Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Snapchat, maybe. They've already got rights for the goals after the games. But Facebook would be the one I'd be most scared of. ITV, Channel 4, BBC, Sky and BT cannot compete with the money that Facebook can bid for it. That's why they should be scared, because the money, Facebook's worth $363 billion. You look at Channel 4, it's probably worth less than $1 billion. So they can't afford to go head to head with them. The rights to the Premier League, the Champions League was $1.2 billion this year for BT. Facebook make that in a day. So they can afford to do that, and their audience is already there. They don't have to do what BT did and went, okay, we're going to buy the rights and then we're going to find out how we're going to get to the audience. Facebook can just go, all right, we're going to buy it and we're going to put it on your newsfeed. Thanks very much. And we know who you support, so we can just give you Liverpool matches, we can just give you Man United matches, and we can give you notifications when they're on, we can give you all the news, we can give you your friends that are watching it, you can create a hub, you can put a Oculus Rift headset on and feel like you're watching it with them in your lounge. There's so many things that are going to take Facebook well ahead of everybody else, and the TV guys need to be incredibly, incredibly scared.
Facebook is, live video in particular, is where it's all going to be at in the next couple of years, because the rights that they have, they've got rights to stream in the MLS in future. It basically changes how you view sport. So we've used Facebook in the past as second, third screen. In the future, your TV will be your second screen and your phone is kind of your first screen. So you'll be watching sports on your phone and you'll have something of EastEnders on in the background. Whereas right now it might be a bit of the vice versa. You might have Twitter here and EastEnders on there, but it's really going to flip in the next couple of years.
I'm here at the Emirates Stadium, the home of Arsenal Football Club, and it's right here where YouTube channel Arsenal Fan TV films their post-match fan interviews. The channel offers fans a chance to express their own opinions, and the publicity it's got online, specifically on social media, means it's been nothing less than an internet phenomenon. It may not always be broadcast in the most professional way, but fan channels such as Arsenal Fan TV have been a huge success. The authenticity of the channel is what people like. These are everyday fans that follow their club home and away. They may not be suited, booted and sharing their thoughts in shiny studios, but one thing they certainly don't lack is passion. The post-match interviews that are released shortly after full-time are eagerly awaited by fans online, and the regularity of them means there's always new content for viewers to enjoy. Do you think the rise in social media then has made it a good time, an exciting time to be a sports journalist?
Yeah, exciting time, definitely. Whether it's enough to earn a living from, I'm not sure. It's difficult. I mean, when I started off, there were generations ahead of me who've been doing it for years who said, good luck, you're coming into it at a very difficult time for the industry. And I would say it's got harder in terms of making a living out of it now than ever, in the traditional sense. But then there are more opportunities out there, definitely, in terms of digital journalism, in terms of online, in terms of social media, and that's opening different avenues for younger journalists coming into the industry.
But how should professional journalists feel about the increasing influence of untrained bloggers and content producers online? It's easier than ever to publish content and share it with so many people around the world. But has this had an effect on the standard of journalism these days? Do you think the influence of someone online with maybe a high amount of followers is a worry for a more traditional journalist that's earned their stripes and done their training?
Yeah, it's definitely a worry, and it's... The thing is that I do think that the courses out there that where people learn about journalism still give you the grounding to understand how things work, to understand what you can say legally, what you can write legally, to understand the basics of how to write an intro, how to construct an article, how to generate a contact, how to treat that contact, how to understand the relationship that you've got there. And in the past, local media would have done that as well. Local newspapers would have done that. Traineeships or national newspapers would have done that. But this is going to sound like an old fuddy-duddy talking, but I think if people suddenly have these massive, I don't know how they generate it, presumably by blogs, if they've generated a 5-figure following on Twitter, I think it empowers them in their minds, and they feel as if they have that background already, that they understand how things work. But legally speaking, they could libel anybody at any moment. They haven't. I don't believe a lot of them have the gumption to work out what you can and can't write. And it's something that Twitter is actually having to develop all the time and realise all the time. And you see it. You see the occasional conversation out there and you think, I mean, how have they got away with writing that? That's scandalous. That is libelous.
Yeah, quality is an issue. I think when you're going to get, it's the same with every single thing. Once you get more of it, the quality is going to come down. There is genuinely a correlation between quality and quantity. But if there's more of it, then there's more chance of quality coming through. You've just got to be able to understand which bits are going to be quality. You know the Guardian's going to be great. You know the Times is going to be great. But are they banging out enough quantity in order to keep you engaged all the time? And actually, is there a toss-up between having something that's not so good, but it's regular? And I think that's what the fan channels are doing really well. Is like, they're not great quality. It's pretty crap to watch. But they put it out all the time, so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to keep going back, and they're doing something different every day, or they're talking about this. So, that's why those people are winning. The problem with The Guardian is they put out this one columnist might have one column a week. He needs to be writing 2 columns a day, to keep people engaged in the same way. Yes, it's quality, and they'll always win because of that. But there's going to be someone in this market who's going to do quality and quantity at the same level, in that sort of mid-range, and they're just going to kill that audience. So yeah, Guardian, pretty much an outlier in that because it is, its heritage is in quality, but there's going to be people who manage to marry those two things together, and there's obviously going to be people who just care about getting quantity out. There's people like 90 Min, Lab Bible, all these guys. They're not so fussed about the quality, which is fine. Their business model is based on quantity, and it's going to drive more revenue. It's going to be a better business in the short term. And it's probably going to be slightly more sustainable in the long term with how monetization of these assets are becoming. But it would be scary for me as a journalist who's honed its trade on the quality of my writing. I'd be looking about how I can supplement that with other things to keep people engaged and keep people caring about what I do all the time.
Do you think the overall effect then of social media on sport and sports news has been a positive or a negative one?
It has to be positive. I mean, anything that gives supporters an insight into the workings of football in my case, or a football club or a team, has got to be positive, because I think that's why people latch onto it, and I do think a lot of football clubs have embraced it fantastically well. And it's almost added an extra element of entertainment to the whole industry, and you can't fight it anyway. So why would I say? Why would I be saying that it's a negative? I mean, you just have to embrace it and you try and make it work for you. I think in the main, that's what we've done. But it does make you think. It does make you adapt, and it can complicate, but it can also inform and make life more interesting. So generally positive.
Social media is a hugely good thing, positive thing for football and sports in general, because it democratises a platform where it treats everyone the same. You could, like I said earlier, you could have 100 followers or 10,000 followers, but if you get a banging tweet, then you're going to get 5,000 retweets no matter what if someone picks it up.
Think of in 10 years' time, you've got a VR headset on or something of the equivalent, and you can pick the seat that you sit in for every match in the stadium, and you can feel like you're there. And I'll sit behind the dugout, and I can feel like I'm behind the dugout and watch the match in that perspective. I mean, obviously that's going to be brilliant for the sport and brilliant for the viewership. You've got to think of what I'm most concerned about for clubs who are buying new stadiums right now is they're really, really focused on the capacity and getting people in. But really, virtual reality, if they look in the future of 25, 50 years maybe, then you could sell an unlimited amount of tickets in just seat 65B. Like an unlimited amount of people could sit in that seat. Why are they caring about putting 60,000 others in and 5,000, 10,000 that can't really see the match that well? Obviously, they want to fill the stadium for atmosphere, but actually for revenue and engaging a multinational audience like the Chelsea's, Man United's, Liverpool's, Arsenal's of this world have to. They can sell the seat 1 million times, and that's what they should be focusing on, the future of what this is going to do and the access that that's going to be able to give people in different countries who can't get to the games and can't support their team in the same way, being able to engage and be part of sport in the way they've never been able to be before.
The opportunity for anyone to get involved in big sporting events and news these days is there for all to see. Traditional news agencies whose pride has been in their print work for years have had to embrace this change, and it'll be intriguing to watch just how much they continue to adapt. The one thing social media has done is bring sports fans so much closer to everyone. You can now get so close to the action both in terms of enjoyment and influence. It's a hugely exciting digital age in sport, and there's no doubt that this is the very start of even more impressive developments to come.